This is take two on my loose ends videos. So I've just collected a whole bunch of stuff in the last little while to talk about, and yeah, I'm using these videos. I know they're kind of coming in rapid succession, but I'm using them as a way to tie up loose ends, things that I've thought about. I don't know if you would really even call it tying up loose ends as much as you would call it elaborating on certain points. So the other day, I commented on something that the Buddha had said, and not really said, but a Buddhist concept when it came to intelligence and good and evil and stupidity. And the comment was basically saying that, and I heard it from a Sam Harris podcast too, which I regularly listen to. In fact, every podcast he puts out, I listen to. But yeah, so anyway, the point being is the concept was that there is no evil, only ignorance. So I thought that kind of fit really well with my thinking. So I put it up on Facebook there, and I got a bit of a funny comment. But it kind of made me think. It kind of made me wonder about. Well, it definitely doesn't make me Buddhist. I mean, I'm very, very far away from being Buddhist. Like, I mean, I'm not Buddhist. So, but I mean, I do agree with that comment. And you think about things like the Bible and the Torah and the Quran and whatever else books, religions have. And I wouldn't say that they're without value. I mean, they've been around for a long time, and there will be things in there that they make sense. They make sense in different contexts. So I mean, there's pretty detailed studies of the Bible and the language in the Bible and how it's used. And the other day I was reading about this forgery that was made by a guy called Walter Fritz of the Jesus Christ, the Jesus's wife gospel, which is basically a small piece of papyrus that claimed to make reference to Jesus's wife. So I mean, while that may or may not be true, I mean it's an interesting thing to study, and there have been a lot of lab tests that kind of looked at the papyrus, et cetera, et cetera. So essentially, what I'm saying is, like, these holy books do have their context for usefulness in some way. And yes, even in the context of there being ideas that kind of surface and kind of, hey, that idea kind of makes sense. I mean, from the Quran, I always thought that the idea of intent kind of made sense. And I don't know how exactly the Quran uses it. I read the verse once, and there's a concept, nakiya or something they call it. I forget. But it's the idea of man being judged by his intent as opposed to his actions. So I don't think that people should be judged by their intent in the sense that if something was never followed through on, they should be punished for it just because they thought it. But I do think the idea of intent kind of shows, it does show something. And I think Sam Harris uses the idea of intent when it comes to terrorism, et cetera, et cetera. And not even just terrorism, but well, anyway, but you get the idea. So the whole thing about, like, moderatism, though, which I wanted to talk about, is it's nothing new I'm mentioning. I've made videos about it before. I mean, it's not that but I just want to reiterate, I guess, that to be moderate doesn't mean you're rational or you're more rational. It just means that you've kind of been the more extreme leanings of your religious following have been kind of dumbed down, kind of like kind of made to not really intrude on secular values or common shared values in a society, a pluralistic society. So you don't burn apostates or you don't murder gay people, but I mean moderate just means that you're not very extreme. And I have a lot of issues with the word moderate. Like, I think moderate kind of means all sorts of different things. I mean, you could be moderate and still think God hates fags and still act upon it, through, I don't know, political measures or social measures, or I don't know, like, I mean, you could still act on these things. I mean, you could still wear a hijab, but still actively engage with men but not shake their hands, or like you could do these things, and that would be considered moderate. In Christianity, for instance, women can't be priests, but I mean, you could still be a moderate Christian in Roman Catholicism anyway. So moderate could mean all different sorts of things. Like, it doesn't there's no real definition of moderate in my, like, I mean, there is a definition of moderate or moderatorism, but like, I mean, there's no single moderate that you can point out. And of course, moderate in Islam is actually relatively conservative compared to a moderate Christian. So moderate is just like, it's just this term for, like, beliefs that could be rational or irrational. I mean, and you just pick and choose which you believe, and you still call yourself, like, you would still call yourself a Muslim or a Christian. So, but I mean, when it comes to, like, cherry picking, like, like taking or finding that there's content in different religions that may make sense in a reasoned way, or even a philosophical way, doesn't mean you're moderate that religion. I mean, I want to emphasize that. Like, I mean, I'm not Buddhist, but the Buddha does say some interesting things. I mean, I even have a quote. Besides that quote, I have another Buddhist quote on my website, Spiralvent. So, yeah, some of the stuff just makes sense, and it is a bit of a difference in terms of Eastern religion and Western thought. There's definitely a difference in the ways they look at things. So, yeah, that's all I really want to say. Yeah, moderate. It's just it's just dumbing down of I guess maybe the actions you would take for certain beliefs, but you could still have varying beliefs. Like, you could still, like I said, hate gays, for instance. But yeah, that's about it. Okay.